Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington and Seth Greene. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, one of the original sharks from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and has generated over $5 billion in TV and digital direct response sales. Seth Greene is the world's first trusted authority on cutting-edge direct response marketing, a best-selling author, and the only 3-time Marketer of the Year nominee. On the podcast, Kevin and Seth interview Sharkpreneurs who share straight talk on what it takes to explode your business.
Why do so many businesses struggle while others seem to explode overnight? Do you wish you had the secret to this type of exponential growth? Now, I've scaled more than 20 businesses to over $100 million, and it's not just luck. In my new book with Mark Tim, Mentor to Millions, you'll learn the repeatable framework I use in all my business ventures for massive success. Order at kevinmentor.com and get over $1,000 in bonuses. Head to kevinmentor.com.
Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast. This is your host, Seth Greene. Today, I have the good fortune to be joined by Jesse Kaiser, a seasoned entrepreneur with a history of operating well-known brands such as Sport Clips, Oxi Fresh, Little Caesars, Valpak. He's chairing the 2024 Multi-Unit Franchise Conference. Jesse, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. So let's go back in time just a little bit. How did you get started?
Well, it's a great question. So started out while I was in college, I was making a name for myself in my fraternity. And some alumni that were about 10 years older than me caught wind of me and said, hey, we've got a technology startup and we want you to come do sales for us. Like, okay. So from 97 to 2005, I worked for a .com startup, made great money doing that. And I realized they were never going to make me a partner. And at some point, I knew I wanted to own the business that I worked for. So I went out and I was going to buy a local pizzeria with my brother. And one of the founders of the company said, you shouldn't do that. And I was like, well, why? Well, you should get into a franchise. I'm like, well, what's a franchise? And he's like, well, they're going to teach you how to run a business because you don't know how to run a business. You're really good at a couple of things, but you have no experience running a business. So I said, okay. So got on the internet, started looking for pizza franchises, found one. And within a year later, boom, opened up, got our first location going. So that's how I got into franchising. Was a business mentor of mine and my employer was like, you need the most chances for success, and this is it.
Well, that is a great start. You could have been happy with one business, one location. What inspired your expansion?
Well, that's part of the story I always say, that if I had just been allowed to go buy that pizzeria, probably would have been a very successful pizzeria, but I would have been at one location, because when you're an independent, you tend not to have a peer group to measure yourself against other than other local independent guys, right, and girls. So the reason I got into multiple locations and multiple brands was, the unit economics makes sense, where it's better for you to hire and train and develop a manager to run that and open up another one and make a little less off each one, but have a lot more of them. And so franchising is really good at that, because it's all systems and procedures that allow you to actually have that in place.
That makes a lot of sense. How did you pick the additional, because you didn't just open more locations of the same franchise. How did you pick the different businesses you wanted to get into?
Sure. So our second brand was Valpak. It's a marketing franchise where you basically, as the owner, you sell local advertisement and it gets mailed out to the premium homes of the neighborhoods. By premium homes, these are people that have disposable income, basically. I got into that because I was opening up my Little Caesars in pretty rural markets where there was only one option once a month for marketing to be mailed, like coupons to be mailed. And I thought, well, this is a great opportunity. I could keep my competitors out, have a monopoly, and still make some money and grow the Little Caesars at the same time. But during that time, I got involved and I started interviewing other businesses to be in the envelope. And the two industries that stuck out to me that seemed like they had pretty good margins and the sophistication of the competitors were not there, where they really understood that you had to spend some money for marketing to have more sales, was carpet cleaning and salons. So the very next business I got into was the salons. And once I got into that and started opening those up, we went to the multi-unit franchise conference at that point. So we had 3 brands, the Valpak, the Little Caesars, and the Sport Clips. And we went there and we ran into the guys at Oxi Fresh, and they had a system that looked like it was super easy. They actually were the only carpet cleaner that actually managed the call center. So you really just had to manage the technicians and get the jobs. You didn't have to manage the call center, which it's a complicated thing. You've got to staff that. I mean, customers are going to call at all times of the day. So that means you got to have multiple people there. There could be hours where no one calls. So what do you do with that employee? You got to figure out other things with it. So the sharing of the call center just made a lot of sense to us. But that was that brand. And then we let the Valpak kind of go off to the side. It became less of a passion project for me. And we focused on the Oxi Fresh and the Sport Clips. And then 2 or 3 years ago at the conference, the multi-unit conference again, I ran into Ideal Image. They had a booth there. That's a medical spa business. And so it's not quite a franchise. It's like a joint venture project between the two of us. Very much structured like how a lot of hotels are set up. So if you walk into a Holiday Inn, more likely someone owns the physical building, but then the owner is either paying Holiday Inn corporate IHG or a third-party management company to actually manage it. And so they get a cut of the top and the bottom of the P&L doing that. So it's very similar in that situation.
How many different businesses and how many locations are you up to now?
About 50 locations between all the brands. Yep.
And how do you manage that type of growth?
That is something where you just basically have to develop as many people underneath you as you can and see who rises and start giving some responsibilities and delegating. But I have always had the philosophy that if I'm going to do anything, I'm not going to do it by myself. So I've always got someone next to me on a phone call or at a project or anything. So they're learning. So then they have that experience. I mean, most of the things that we do as entrepreneurs, they're block and tackles. They're being brilliant at the basics, right? So I think the average person, as long as they've been trained how to do it, can do 80% of what a business owner does very well, sometimes even better.
You might have inspired some debate amongst our listeners, but that's quite all right. You've got 50 different locations, probably hundreds of employees. How do you handle the stress?
No stress. No stress.
Well, then you got to tell us how you pulled that off.
Well, part of it is I'm diversified in a way that, if I have a situation where for whatever reason I have to close a location down, let's say during the pandemic, we would have some issues staffing. People would get sick and you had to quarantine for 14 days. So, and they all worked together. So guess what? They all had to quarantine together. When that happened, I've got enough locations that it doesn't show up on my personal radar that, oh God, I don't have the revenue from that one location. So that allows me to be a little bit more removed and dissecting if there's an issue there. I've had some stores that I've purchased and the culture and the team wasn't right. So we had to let a lot of them go. And, I think if it was my first location or my second location, I'd be really stressed about that because it wasn't making money. But I just kind of saw the big picture. Like if I get better quality employees in here, everything else goes away as far as problems. So that's probably why I don't have the stress. I've just gotten diversified enough, and that's taken me, 15 years to get to that point. I'm not an overnight success by any means.
Nobody is. So with all the success you've achieved in a relatively low stress environment, what's your biggest challenge now?
Biggest challenge, I want to acquire. I want to acquire. And the problem is, and the brands that I'm in right now, we're seeing some good times. And when it's good times, people don't want to sell. So, or if they do, the multiples just don't make sense to me. So that would be the biggest frustration, is that I would love to double the units of my Sport Clips overnight. I've got the infrastructure for it. To double the number of Sport Clips that I have would require me to take on 4 more employees that I deal with directly. And my brother, who is my partner, would take on 1 more. So, the double the size of a brand with 5 employees, that's not too hard to do.
Absolutely. Your passion is obvious. What do you like best about what you're doing?
Freedom. Entrepreneurs, we have 4 freedoms that the average American or human just don't get to enjoy as much. And I call them freedoms to and freedoms from. and they are time, purpose, money, and relationships. And as an entrepreneur, I get to pick and choose who I do business with. I get to pick and choose the relationships I have. I get to pick and choose how much money I want to make this year. And I get to pick and choose what I do with my time. And most importantly for me, my purpose, right? So I try to stay in things that give me energy and give me my unique ability.
How did it come about that you are now speaking at the multi-unit conference?
Well, I've spoke as a panelist a few times. As the chair, I've served on their executive board for several years, and I feel like maybe I was the last man standing that hadn't been one. So I was anointed last spring that I would be the 2024 chair, and it's been an exciting journey so far already.
That is awesome. What's on the docket? What's on the agenda? What are you excited about?
Well, the conference is exciting. I can't release who the keynote speaker is, but I do know he's a very famous author. And as soon as we get everything ironed out with the contract, it's going to be on the multi-unit website. So keep checking that. But I'm pretty excited about this author. I'm excited to meet him. And he has spoke at this conference many years ago, and everyone still talks about how great this guy was.
That is fantastic. What else do you want to share about you? I understand that you've gotten to the point where there's very little stress. There had to have been some over the years. How'd you overcome some of the adversities you went through?
I would say the biggest stress was we were growing in a pace where we weren't paying ourselves very much. There was a very long time, probably a 10-year spent where, well, let's put it this way. I am just now getting to the point where I pay myself a salary that is comparable to what I was making before I started my entrepreneurial journey. And part of it is we wanted to keep growing and reinvest. The only owners of the company are my brother and I. We've not had to bring in outside equity or anything like that. It's all been organic growth. And, now we can grow pretty fast because we don't have a lot of debt, but we had a lot of debt in the very beginning. And it was always one of those things where, as soon as we open another store and it does really well, then I could pay myself a little bit more. Then the store doesn't open up as hot as you'd like it to. And you're like, oh boy, I've got an anchor around my neck. How do I get this thing to start floating for me instead of sinking? Those were the stresses I had. But at the end of the day, my brother and I, we come from very normal lives, and it was my grit that got the inertia of the money to start the company. And I just always knew that if it ever fell apart, I had the tenacity to get back there again. I think Warren Buffett said that he could get everything that he has now in 5 years, knowing what he knows now. And I've always felt that way. There was just always that learning curve to prove that I knew what I was actually thinking and feeling.
That makes a lot of sense. For our folks watching or listening who want to learn more about what you're doing, where is the best place for them to go?
Oh boy. Well, you can follow me. I've got an entrepreneur page on Facebook, Jesse Kaiser, entrepreneur. And then again, the multi-unit franchise conference. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be speaking quite a bit as I'm kind of emceeing the whole conference. But multiunitfranchising.com should be the website for that. And that conference is in Vegas, and it starts on March 19th.
All right. Well, we greatly appreciate your time. This has been Seth Greene for Sharkpreneur with Jesse Kaiser. Jesse, thanks so much for joining us.
Seth, thank you for the invite. I appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody, for watching or listening. We'll talk to you or see you next time.
Do you need money to fund your idea, product, or service? Are you ready to take your business to the next level, but need capital to get it done? Kevin Harrington has heard more than 50,000 pitches and knows how to help you make the perfect pitch to get the funding for your entrepreneurial dream. He's distilled the process down in his perfect pitch cheat sheet, and it's yours for free. Just text PITCH to him right now at 727-888-2100. Text PITCH to 727-888-2100 right now and claim your free perfect pitch cheat sheet. Text PITCH to 727-888-2100 to start funding your dream today.
This show has been produced by Market Domination, LLC. To discover how you can have your own show completely done for you and turn it into a real published book and become the authority in your marketplace, go to www.marketdominationllc.com/podcast offer.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.